wabarakatuh. Good morning, best wishes for all of us. Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya. Let us praise the Almighty God for His blessings we are able to conduct. Overseas Studies Program of Defense Management Faculty 2021, with them Management of National Resources for Defense and Security. This program will be implemented from 21 June until 25 June 2021. Thank you for all participants to attend this event. The Honorable Dean of Defense Management Faculty of the Republic of Indonesia Defense University, Rear Admiral Dr. Kasih Prihantoro, SAMM Mterhan. Dean of Defense Studies and Management Faculty of National Defense University of Malaysia, Lieutenant Colonel Professor Madya Arifin bin Ismail. Vice Dean of Defense Management Faculty of the Republic of Indonesia Defense University, Air Force Marshal Anton Iman Santosa. Speaker and moderator from National Defense University of Malaysia and the Republic of Indonesia Defense University. Lecturers and staffs of Defense Management Faculty of the Republic of Indonesia Defense University, and all students of Defense Management Faculty of the Republic of Indonesia Defense University and Defense Studies and Management Faculty National Defense University of Malaysia. Before beginning today's agenda, we would like to inform the rundown as follows. Opening by MC, opening remarks by the Dean of Defense Management Faculty of the Republic of Indonesia Defense University. Opening remarks by Dean of Defense Studies and Management Faculty of National Defense University of Malaysia. Presentation by the speaker. Question and answer session guided by the moderator. Certificate awarding to the speaker and moderator. And the last, closing. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the next agenda will be opening remarks by the Dean of Defense Management Faculty of the Republic of Indonesia Defense University, Rear Admiral Dr. Kasih Prihantoro, SAMM Mterhan. The screen is yours.
Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
For all, Shalom, Namo Buddhaya, Om Swastiastu. The Honorable Rector of the Republic of Indonesia Defense University, Vice Admiral Professor Dr. Amarullah Octavian, Naib Chancellor of National Defense University of Malaysia, Lieutenant General Dato' Hasagaya bin Abdullah, Dean of the Faculty of Defense Studies and Management of National Defense University of Malaysia, Lieutenant Colonel Professor Madya Arifin bin Ismail, Vice Dean of Defense Management Faculty of the Republic of Indonesia Defense University, Air Force Marshal Anton Iman Santosa, all secretaries of study program and lecturers of Defense Management Faculty of the Republic of Indonesia Defense University, all lecturers and students of National Defense University of Malaysia, all students of Defense Management Faculty of the Republic of Indonesia Defense University, and all students of Faculty of Defense Studies and Management, National Defense University of Malaysia, whom we are proud of. Our distinguished participants, first of all, let us praise to the Almighty God for His grace and blessing today. We are able to conduct and participate in the Republic of Indonesia Defense University Overseas study program of Defense Management Faculty with the theme Management of the National Resources for Defense and Security. This joint overseas study program in 2021 in cooperation with Faculty of Defense Studies and Management, National Defense University of Malaysia, is an implementation of Memorandum of Understanding signed on 9 July 2019 between the Republic of Indonesia Defense University of National Defense University of Malaysia. On behalf of the Republic of Indonesia Defense University official, we would like to convey utmost appreciation to National Defense University of Malaysia for the cooperation during the overseas study program. As we are aware, every year the Republic of Indonesia Defense University always conduct overseas study visit to broaden and deepen the student understanding on actual issues in defense and security fields. Last year, we conduct overseas study program with National Defense University of Malaysia, and today we are honored the same opportunity to conduct this year's overseas study program with the National Defense University of Malaysia again. Up to now, the world is still facing COVID-19 pandemic. Indonesia and Malaysia are also struggling to handle the pandemic. For that reason, the overseas study program will be conducted through video conference, as we did last year. Today, we are also honored to have lecturers from National Defense University of Malaysia who participate in this program. We do believe that this program will strengthen the friendship between Republic of Indonesia Defense University and National Defense University of Malaysia. For the next 5 days, we will receive calls from competent experts in the field of defense and security from National Defense University of Malaysia, accordance with the theme which was delivered based on the term of reference. This program is expected to provide students with insight and lessons learned for both the students of the Republic of Indonesia Defense University and National Defense University of Malaysia. To conclude, let us pray to the Almighty God, may this program run successfully and result in the beneficial outcome for all of us. Our distinguished participants, by the blessing of the Almighty God today, Monday, 21 June 2021 at 9:07 a.m., the overseas study program of the Defense Management Faculty of the Republic of Indonesia Defense University is officially started. That's all from us, and thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Shalom, Om Santi, Santi, Santi Om. Thank you.
Thank you. Speech by Dean of Defense Studies and Management Faculty of National Defense University of Malaysia, Lieutenant Colonel Professor Madya Arifin bin Ismail. The screen is yours.
Thank you, Pengurusi Majlis. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Rektor Unhan, Naib Chancellor UPNM, Dekan Fakulti Pengurusan Pertahanan Aksda TNI Dr. Kasih Prihantoro, and semua hadirin sekalian. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh. Selamat pagi dan salam sejahtera. Syukur, alhamdulillah, marilah kita sama-sama merafakkan sembah setinggi-tinggi kesyukuran kepada hadrat Allah Subhanahu wa taala kerana dengan limpah dan izinnya maka kita dapat berkumpul pada pagi ini dalam majlis ilmu yang amat istimewa. Hadirin sekalian, pertama sekali saya ingin merakamkan ucapan setinggi-tinggi penghargaan dan tahniah kepada Jawatankuasa Unhan UPNM 2021 kerana membuat kali ketiga ianya berjaya dianjurkan walaupun dengan keadaan norma baru. Program yang dilaksanakan pada hari ini merupakan kesinambungan acara yang telah dimulakan pada tahun 2019. Penganjuran program ini merupakan satu wadah yang amat signifikan dalam merealisasikan hasrat dan harapan universiti untuk menjadi sebuah universiti pertahanan premier di rantau ini dalam bidang pendidikan, latihan dan penambahan ilmu. Setinggi-tinggi penghargaan juga diberikan kepada pihak Unhan kerana bersama-sama dalam memastikan program akademik ini terlaksana, berteraskan kepada hubungan dan persefahaman yang terjalin melalui pemerhatian di antara dua buah institusi pada Julai 2019 melalui satu MOU. Penganjuran program ini merupakan medium dan platform yang baik serta positif dalam membincangkan perihal berkaitan nilai-nilai sumber pertahanan dan keselamatan. Tuan-tuan dan puan-puan sekalian, berdasar pada dokumen MOU yang telah dimeteri oleh UPNM dan Unhan telah bersetuju untuk menganjurkan program kuliah lawatan kerja luar iaitu KKLN secara bergilir di antara UPNM dan Unhan. Program pertama KKLN telah dimulai oleh pihak Unhan ke UPNM pada tahun 2019 dengan penglibatan 160 orang peserta yang terdiri daripada para pensyarah dan pelajar. Dan pada masa itu kita masih dalam tidak termasuk dalam peringkat MCO ataupun wabak pandemik COVID-19. Hadirin sekalian, program ilmiah yang pertama yang telah diadakan pada Julai 2020 pada hari ini 21 Jun hingga 25 Jun 2021 adalah yang kedua dan akan dilaksanakan secara webinar atau web seminar seperti mana juga kita telah laksanakan pada yang sebelum ini. Mekanisme pelaksanaan secara online ini merupakan antara langkah dalam menyokong dasar kerajaan bagi mengekang penularan wabak pandemik COVID-19 melalui pelaksanaan Perintah Kawalan Pergerakan ataupun yang dikenali sebagai Movement Control Orders atau MCO. Anyway, that's what come to us. Life must go on. Dalam membangunkan modal insan bagi memenuhi keperluan dan kehendak pasaran khususnya bidang pertahanan dan keselamatan, UPNM sangat serius untuk memastikan our generation will go with the flying colours and excellent. Secara analogi, dalam melahirkan mahasiswa dan graduan yang mempunyai imej dan identiti yang berketerampilan, segala-gala perlu bermula dari diri kita semua sebagai pemimpin yang akan menjadi ikutan ataupun role model kepada sekalian mahasiswa yang lain. Minda yang cergas berasal daripada yang cergas. Maka fizikal yang cergas akan membawa kepada kepimpinan yang cemerlang. Sebelum mengundurkan diri, saya sekali lagi ingin menzahirkan ucapan terima kasih dan penghargaan kepada barisan pensyarah atau dosen-dosen yang dipilih untuk menyampaikan carahan masing-masing. Segala pengorbanan dan sumbangan tuan-tuan dan puan-puan sepanjang tempoh program ilmiah ini berlangsung amatlah dihargai. Semoga segala perancangan, penyampaian dan perkongsian ilmu berjalan dengan lancar dan sebaiknya tanpa sebarang gangguan. Dengan itu, marilah kita sama-sama memanjatkan doa kepada Ilahi agar majlis ilmu ini diberkati dan dirahmati. Dengan lapas Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, saya dengan sukacitanya merasmikan program kuliah kerja luar negara KKLN bagi pihak UPNM secara webinar Management of National Resource for Defence and Security di antara UPNM dan Unhan. Sekian, wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh.
The honorable participants, the next agenda is presentation of Defense Policy of Malaysia, Concept and Practice, which will be guided by the moderator, Colonel Dr. Guntur Eko Saputro, SIP MM CIQNR. To the moderator, the screen is yours. Before starting the session, we are going to read the curriculum vitae of the moderator. Curriculum vitae. Name: Colonel Armed Dr. Guntur Eko Saputro, SIP MM. Position: Indonesia Defense University Lecturer. Status: Merit. Origin: Solo, Jawa Tengah. General Education: Bachelor Degree, Social Politics at University of General Ahmad Yani. Master Degree: Master, Management at Krishna Dwipayana University. Doctoral Degree, Economics at University of Borobudur. Military Education, Military Academic 19 and 95. Parachuting Course, Intelligence Course, Basic Education Field Artillery, Military Teacher School, Advanced English Course, Battery Commander Course, Military Observer Course, Advanced School Officer 1, Advanced School Officer 3, Army Staff and Command School, Battalion Commander Course, Kodim Commander Course. Domestic and Foreign Duties. Operation Horizontal Conflict Maluku Tenggara. Operation Horizontal Conflict Maluku Utara. Military Observer Congo Africa. KMA South Korea. ELC Singapore. IDMM plus WG South Africa. IDMM Retreat Laos. BCA Malaysia. GKLB Malaysia. NADI Vietnam. And he joined 25 seminar and 11 scientific work. The next agenda will be led by the moderator.
Thank you very much, Asti Siswanti, Bachelor of Economy. You give me time to arrange this program. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Honorable Vice Admiral Professor Dr. Amrul Octavian, ST, Rector of the Republic of Indonesia Defense University. Lieutenant Colonel Professor Madia Arifin bin Ismail, Dean of Defense Management Faculty of UPNM Malaysia. Rear Admiral Dr. Kasih Prihantoro, SEMM, Dean of Defense Management Faculty of the Republic of Indonesia Defense University. Professor Ruhanas Harun, Lecturer of UPNM. Dr. Nur Haslina Fairuz Musikuti, all of lecture, staff and students from National IDU and UPNM. First of all, thanks to our God Almighty that today, this morning, we can meet together in here with our safety and our healthy. This morning, actually, I am surprised because I can sit in here among a group of people, among elected of people, and of course, dedicated people around me. I would like to give my big appreciation to Professor Ruhanas Harun for sparing time to give a lecture and knowledge for all of us here. And also thank you for all participation to join this forum. Today's session will be divided into parts. The first is a lecture from Professor Ruhanas Harun from NDU Malaysia. And then the second is question answer. And the last will be brief opinion by the student. The topic of the speaker today is the defense policy of Malaysia under the term of management national resources of defense and security. Before I give the speaker the floor, I would like to read a short profile first. Ruhanas Harun is professor at the Department of Strategic Studies, National Defense University of Malaysia, UPNM. She researches, lectures, and publishes on the theme of foreign policy, national security, and regional integration. She is senior fellow and Malaysian Institute of Defense and Security, and lecturer at the Malaysian Armed Forces Center for Defense Studies in Defense and Foreign Policy. She studied at University of Malaysia and the Sorbonne University Paris. She also distinguished herself for Malaysia leading expert on Indo-China, specifically on Vietnam. Besides teaching and research, she has translated books and articles from French to Malay. Current research interests includes Malay national security, Malaysia, Indonesia, region, and Southeast Asian regional diplomacy. She has contributed to academic and popular writing, includes newspaper.
Dia kata I tak boleh share lagi.
Next time, Professor Ruhanas Harun will give some presentation. After the session is question answer. The first, I just remind everybody that if you have question, don't speak too long and direct for your question. And don't forget to introduce yourself, your name, and your study program. Okay, now let's begin to the first session. Prof. Ruhanas Harun, you have 60 minutes to the session. Please, you may have the floor.
Alright. Terima kasih Pak Guntur as moderator. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh dan selamat pagi kepada saudara-saudari sekalian di Jakarta, di Unhan. Terlebih dahulu saya ingin mengucapkan ribuan terima kasih atas undangan untuk menyampaikan kuliah mengenai dasar pertahanan Malaysia, konsep dan praktik. Sebelum itu, saya ingin membuat salutasi kepada Dekan FPP, Lieutenant Colonel Profesor Madya Arifin, dan juga kepada Dekan Bapak Dr. Prihantoro dari Unhan, kepada pengurus co-organizer bersama UPNM Dr. Hazlina Fairuz. Tuan-tuan, saudara-saudari sekalian yang saya hormati, izinkan saya untuk menyampaikan kuliah pagi ini dalam bahasa Inggeris seperti mana yang telah ditetapkan dan sudah dipersetujui. Ladies and gentlemen, as introduction, I would like to say, number one, that I am not in uniform or not military. However, I have been associated with the Malaysian Armed Forces. I've been teaching at the Maktab Turus Angkatan Tentera for the last 20 years and at Maktab Pertahanan Angkatan Tentera for the last 15 years. And we have a new college in the Armed Forces, and that is Maktab Ketahanan Nasional. Since inception, for the last 2 years, I've been with them. And I'm very happy to say that in the last 4 years of my teaching with Armed Forces outfit, we were privileged to welcome officers from the TNI, from Indonesian Armed Forces. And I'm very happy today that this cooperation still continues. And I think more important, my participation is, of course, as mentioned just now, is to strengthen links and friendship with Indonesia through our two universities, get to know each other better. And as we share many, many commonalities, however, I personally feel that these commonalities, persamaan, persaudaraan, etc., have not been fully utilized. So I hope this cooperation with Unhan will materialize that dream or that wish. Now, coming back to the topic of Dasar Pertahanan Malaysia, Concept dan Praktik, or the Malaysian Defense Policy, Concept and Practice, first of all, I would like to state that Malaysia is relatively a small nation compared to, of course, Indonesia or China or Vietnam. However, in the international system and in the context of the current state system, any country, big or small, has the duty and the responsibility to defend and protect its sovereignty, independence, and territorial integrity. These are the core responsibilities entrusted to the armed forces all over the world. So it's the same in Malaysia and in Indonesia. So these core responsibilities in Malaysia is being entrusted to Angkatan Tentera Malaysia, or the ATM, and Indonesia it's TNI, Tentera Nasional Indonesia. Defense policy of Malaysia has been shaped and evolved according to both internal and external factors, and that defense is a component of the nation's strategic policy to ensure national security and survival, and with the armed forces as the lead agency for defense. Now, let me just go briefly over the the organization of defense in Malaysia. Ours is known as the Ministry of Defense Malaysia, Kementerian Pertahanan Malaysia, and established since independence, began with a small unit, etc., etc. And we are, like in other countries, tri-services. So we have the Tentera Darat or the Army, Tentera Laut Diraja Malaysia or TLDM, and that stands for the Royal Malaysian Navy. And the third service is the Tentera Udara Diraja Malaysia, TUDM, the Royal Malaysian Air Force. Now, quite different from many militaries in the region, the ATM, or Angkatan Tentera Malaysia, remains a professional military, and they have no interest in politics. They have never been involved in politics. So it's strictly a professional military. Okay, next. I would like to look I think before we discuss the concept, the aims, implementation, you have to look at the security outlook of the nation or of the region. Now, one of the most important factors that shaped the security outlook was the Cold War. And that Cold War, plus all the contents, was an impetus for the growth of Malaysian Defense Force and its overwhelming focus on land defense. Here, what I mean to say that in Malaysia, for a very long time, the concept and the focus of defense had been overwhelmingly land. There are reasons for this. One is, of course, the nation was facing the insurgency from 1948 to 1989. This insurgency was the war or the fight against the Chinese-dominated Malayan Communist Party, or the PKM, Party Komunis Malaya. As you in Indonesia, you had the PKI. It was also supported by Beijing at that time. So in the conceptualization, in the understanding of our national security and of our defense, this to me is probably the most important single factor in shaping the security and defense orientation of Malaysia throughout the Cold War period. Of course, after that, we have changes. Next. So I have Hazlina, who's controlling the slides? Fairuz? Can we go to the next? All right. So now let's look, again, I'm talking about the security outlook. We are discussing what are the threats to Malaysian national security, because it's very important to know these threats, because threats is one of the factors that shape your national security and it shapes your defense policy. I have mentioned just now the Cold War, the Vietnam War, etc., etc. However, after the end of the Cold War, we get what is known today as the non-traditional security threats. They had been there even during the Cold War or before the 1990s, but it was not highlighted because the nation, most countries were preoccupied with what is known as, the hard security. The danger, the threat to your independence, sovereignty, and territorial integrity. However, today we have this additional non-traditional security threats. And although the conceptualization, thinking about security has been formed by traditional threats, this one comes in as another factor that shape the current persekitaran ataupun lingkungan, ya, keamanan. Next. Yeah, I would just like to, before we go to the South China Sea, I would like to mention a few events in Malaysia that shaped the defense and security thinking. First one just now, the Cold War and also the communist insurgency. And not least, I think this we should remember the confrontasi. In fact, confrontasi 1963 to 66 actually was a very important factor in shaping Malaysia's foreign policy, and by that extended to our defense policy. Well, today you have the South China Sea dispute, which remains a major concern to our national security, territorial integrity. So in all these conflicts, disputes, the armed forces plays a very important role, inevitable and necessary, because the armed forces is the one or the agency that has all the assets and also the what you call the organization, the organizational efficacy to secure and protect our security or national interest in all circumstances, I would say. Okay, next one. All right, now let's look at the Malaysia's defense policy. Now, I would like, or just now I mentioned that Malaysia is not a nation at war. it had undergone a few or several conflicts and passed through some events. However, Malaysia is not what you call a country torn by war or conflict, and we remain very peaceful and peace-loving. However, because of the absence of this big conflict and even external aggression to the nation, our defense policy inevitably has to adapt to the situation of peace. So the armed forces of Malaysia is basically armed forces in time of peace. That's where we are today. So the main idea coming from this is to make defense more comprehensive. More comprehensive here means that you want to include not just the military in the defense and security of the nation, but all segments of society. Before you arrive at that, a comprehensive defense and security, Malaysia went through several phases that gave birth to a few concepts. Now, in the 70s, we changed or shifted from defense to security in the 70s. This is to align with Malaysia's foreign policy of non-alignment and also multi-directional. So the meaning of this shift from defense to security is basically that in order to protect your country, national interest, national security, you cannot depend only on the military or on the armed forces. You have to include other means, for example, political, economic, and diplomatic means. So this is the meaning of shift from defense to security. It does not mean that the defense is abandoned. No, we just varied our means because of constraint in resources, etc. And then after that, there was a concept that was born, which translated into practical defense. They call it the HANRU, or Pertahanan Menyeluruh, meaning total defense in the 80s. And today, although again, HANRU was never abandoned, but however, it did not really take off. So this is quite different from Singapore. The total defense really took off. So for Malaysia, I think we tried all the time to move from one period to from one concept or a policy to another, according to the situation at that time. Now, the aims and objectives of Malaysia's defense policy is well described in the first ever published Kertas Putih Pertahanan ataupun Defense White Paper in 2019. That was the first time that Malaysia ever published a defense white paper. Indonesia had done before, Philippines had done before, Australia, etc. But for us, it was the first time, Kertas Putih Pertahanan. Although this Kertas Putih Pertahanan is preceded by, we had before what we call Dasar Pertahanan, but it is not as elaborate and not as focused as this defense white paper. All right, next. Now, defense white paper of Malaysia, of course, I'm not going to go into that, but it's made known to the public, well received, approved in parliament, etc., etc. Okay, next one. All right, let's look at the conceptual dimension of Malaysia's defense policy. Now, first, we talk about the sources. What are the sources when you want to look at how Malaysia's defense policy is conceptualized? First, we look at the published official documents. Published, for example, the Kertas Putih Pertahanan. That is one published official document. But you have other official published documents, such as in Kertas Dasar Keselamatan ataupun Keamanan Malaysia, and then you have statements by Defense Minister or Foreign Minister with regards to certain issues that, for example, covers defense area. So all these conceptual dimension were translated into this practical program, which I mentioned here. One is KESBAN. What is KESBAN? KESBAN is actually a short abbreviation for Keselamatan dan Pembangunan, security and defense. Now, the idea is this was to combat one of the threats. You remember I said just now about the communist insurgency. So KESBAN proved to be, well, I wouldn't say popular, but successful. So these were the beginning of bringing in the elements of comprehensive security and defense. And then you graduate to HANRO, and then now you have the defense white paper. Now, the second source of Malaysia's defense policy, besides the published official documents, would be analysis or observation on ad hoc policies and implementation responses of nation in crisis. When did Malaysia face crisis? So there will be analysis and observation on it, and that becomes a second source of the conceptualization of Malaysia's foreign policy. All right, next. Now, so we continue. The idea in this conceptualization of Malaysia's defense policy, the main idea or the idea centers around the protecting Malaysia's strategic interest, works with the key based on the key national principles adhered to by the nation. And one of the philosophical or the ideologies where our key national principles would be based on is the Rukun Negara. Now, Rukun Negara is the national principles or the national ideology, very much similar in, well, function, I would say, as the Pancasila of Indonesia, except that Pancasila is more well-known to the Indonesian public. The Rukun Negara, well, it's taught in school, but I think for some reason, we do not pay as much attention to our Rukun Negara as Indonesia to its Pancasila. All right, so that is the center, the central idea. Now, the scope focus on both the global and regional dimension, because number one, Malaysia is a very active member of the international community, a trading nation. And if you look geographically, Malaysia is right at the center of Southeast Asia, of ASEAN, controlling the gateway from the west to the east. So we share with Indonesia and Singapore the responsibility of Straits of Malacca. And then on the eastern side, Malaysia has South China Sea, Sabah, and Sarawak. So these two gateways. Now, the other factor that came to influence the conceptualization of our defense policy is strategic culture. Now, I think strategic culture might not be familiar to some of us, but strategic culture is basically the idea embedded in the people, in the culture, about thinking about security, about defense and national interest of the nation. Now, Malaysia's strategic culture is based on peaceful and peace-loving nation. Just now I said we didn't know big wars or big conflict. So that shaped our strategic culture. In the sense that we think basically more about peace than about war. Now, what does it have as an impact on your defense policy? So this impact you can see in the practice actually of our foreign policy principles. The respect for the UN principle of peace and humanitarian values, etc. And now in ASEAN, peaceful resolution of conflict, etc., etc. So this is a strategic culture of a peaceful and peace-loving nation. All right, next. Okay, just now I have discussed this. Let's skip this one. All right. And also I have mentioned just now some events that shaped Malaysia's security doctrine, the communist insurgency, and the impact is that what came out of that war against the communist insurgency is that Malaysia had a is well trained in jungle warfare to counter the threats. And number two, as seen just now in Kesban, we adopted a socio-economic approach to separate or alienate population from the insurgents, provide them with means of livelihood, build their confidence in authorities, to shift away their sympathy from the communist insurgent, not for, but from, to shift away sympathies from. Yes, okay, next. Now, let's look at what are the array of threats, external and domestic. This is very important that we know what exactly the threat, because threats, besides the historical experience, the current threats will shape your defense thinking. All right, now, regional insecurity. Just now I mentioned the Cold War, and today we we are not now in the Cold War, but there is an element of continuity about the uncertainty, about the power politics among great nations in the region, and that will create instability in our region, and that will affect your thinking on defense and on security. All right, next. Okay, now we come to the hard or the core aspect of Malaysia's defense. Just now I was explaining to you the evolution, the development about thinking about our defense policy, and what are the phases that we went through. Number three, what were the threats that shaped our defense policy thinking. Now we are looking at the developing or development of the military capabilities in Malaysia. So I hope you have understood fairly the conceptualization, the ideas surrounding defense thinking. So now let's see how we put this or we materialize this. All right, in the early years of post-independence Malaysia, we relied mainly on Britain and the Commonwealth to ensure our security, such as to combat communist insurgency and also to deal with confrontation. At that time, 1963 to 66, Malaysia was just a new nation Malaysia was born in 1963, although Malaya, the Semenanjung Malaysia, got independence in 1957. However, the establishment of Malaysia in 1963 created this conflict with Indonesia because President Sukarno at that time could not accept the establishment of a bigger Malaysian nation next to Indonesia. So therefore, he launched the confrontasi. And at that time, we had no other power and we could not rely on ourselves. So Britain and the Commonwealth came to our aid. And then confrontasi ended, and also the emergency. Now this war against the communists di Malaysia itu dipanggil darurat, ya, zaman darurat ataupun emergency, ended. Of course, there were several phases. The real end of emergency was in 1989 when the government of Malaysia and the Communist Party of Malaya signed a peace agreement tahun 1989, mediated by Thailand. And then also the Vietnam War ended in 1975. So all this end of conflicts actually ensued an era of adjustment and rapprochement politically. But for Malaysian defense, it created two things. One, that we started to look at reinforcing defense, and number two, although peace has come, but threats were still lingering around. So by the end of the 80s, Malaysia's defense emphasis moved away from counter-insurgency threat thinking towards building a conventional warfare capability, followed by the modernization of ATM, Angkatan Tentera Malaysia, and followed in the 90s by further modernization. Next. Okay, so what it intended, or our defense wanted, was to develop a credible force. Now you have gone through all those experience, conceptualized, and you know where the threats came from. Now you want to develop a credible force so that you no longer depends on your friends from Britain, Commonwealth, etc., etc. So today, the Malaysian Army is regarded as the backbone, well, no offense to the Navy or the Air Force, the backbone of our national defense, and constitute a sizable portion of ATM. I think something like 80,000 out of the 100,000 ATM. Well, this is, you might look at this is, a very small number because above, we have actually above 100,000, but they belong to the non-conventional or the non-regular military, for example, volunteers and askar watania, etc. So the army, developing the army as a credible force, the history is, well, began, I should say, with the Royal Malay Regiment, or the Regiment Askar Melayu Diraja, in 1938, and then became battalion in 1941. I'm mentioning this not to single out just the importance of the Regiment Askar Melayu Diraja, but just to bear in mind why, until today, it retains that historical significance and influence within the military, because it has a historical personality in there. It's like the TNI, you go back, you have a historical influence in Indonesian society. Okay, this one, all those events I have explained in developing. Let's go next slides. All right, further development. So after the end of those conflicts, wars, the international system of Cold War, etc., you come to a new period in our international relations, which we call the post-Cold War, and which coincide with the 1990s. So the beginning of the 1990s, the fall of Soviet Union in 1991. Now you might think, yes, very good. Now we have a period of peace. However, that period of peace gave, at least in Southeast Asia, what we call a period of arms race. Now, observers or analysts say, you have now arms race in Southeast Asia. However, we in Southeast Asia, as nations, we say, no, this is modernization. So we are doing our force modernization. Now, you might ask why in the 1990s that this arms race or force modernization took place. Number one, at that time, countries in the region economically became better. So it is a question of affordability. So now you can afford to modernize your force because modernizing force is not a very cheap thing. So if you have economic affordability, then you can do it. Now, second, even though the Cold War ended those ideological wars, etc., you are facing with the new threats. And you see the rise of China and how America responded to the rise of China. So that create a period of uncertainty. And then thirdly, of course, when one nation in Southeast Asia started forced modernization, so the next country will say, oh, I have to do the same. So there you can call it competition. But competition not to aggress another country, but to strengthen your defense. All right. So the army moved from strength to strength in the 70s, the 80s. And so this is another reason why in Malaysia, we had to do this force modernization, because as you develop, as your strength increase, you also need increase in firepower capability. All right, that's it. And in the 1980s, as you all can remember, Dr. Mahathir became Prime Minister of Malaysia. He brought in ideas to strengthen the ATM or Angkatan Tentera Malaysia. Why? To enable Malaysia to carry out its international responsibilities and duties, especially here, that of peacekeeping. Because during Malaysia's first peacekeeping was in 1960, if I'm not mistaken, I think so. Colonel Arifin, maybe you can correct me later. In 1960 in the Congo. And then after that, there was nothing. There was sort of a vacuum until the 80s when Dr. Mahathir came in. And from then on, Malaysia's involvement in peacekeeping operation went, from strength to strength. So you need that. So this is what part of his foreign policy design to increase and strengthen Malaysian participation. And also during his time, Dr. Mahathir started economic development, industrialization, etc. So that gave Malaysia affordability, as I mentioned just now. Economy was doing well. Okay, next. And now let's look how today we ranked the Malaysian Army. Now, I would like to mention that this, it's based on criteria capabilities such as human resource, logistics, geography. However, they did not include assets. I think you know the reason why. It's very sensitive, and I think we do not want the world to know how many rifles or whatever you have. So now, whatever the circumstances of security, the army remains at the forefront of national security because of the nature and the extent of its interactions with the population. Now, I would like to specifically mention this, not because I'm biased towards the army, but number one is because of the reality is such, and therefore we have to explain why the army has a big share in our national defense. Now, I would like to explain that by saying that it is in the nature and the extent of the army's interaction with the population. So maybe in natural disaster, or when you have flood, when you have what else? Malaysia does not have too much natural disaster, unlike you people in Indonesia. You have, what do you call that? Gunung berapi. You have banjir as well. Gempa bumi. So we do not have, we have banjir. In fact, when I first went to Yogyakarta and looking for a place to live, so some of the landlords were jokingly asking me, he said, Ibu mau kawasan mana? Gempa bumi atau gunung berapi? So I said, give me the gempa bumi, not gunung berapi, because gunung berapi is so unpredictable. However, Alhamdulillah in Malaysia kita tidak ada. So we have natural disasters that naturally made the army to be the first so-called line of defense. So this is, and then also when you have, jungle warfare, etc. So it's the military. It's the army. You don't send your navy or the air force. So this is what I mean, the nature and the extent of interaction with the population. Okay, let's look at the rank that analyst or international analyst gave. Of course, number one in we're talking about ASEAN. The number one army in ASEAN country is Indonesia. Number two is Vietnam. Number three is Thailand. Number four, Myanmar, and Malaysia only came number 5. So whatever that means, I leave it up to you. All right, next. Okay. Now, the other service of the Malaysian Armed Forces is, of course, the TLDM, or Tentera Laut Diraja Malaysia. Now, the importance or the TLDM, the Royal Navy, became increasingly important for at least 2 reasons. One is the regional geostrategic development since 1990s and the accompanying threats with it. Number 2, that Malaysia is now a maritime nation, declared and acknowledged as a maritime nation in 2019. And thirdly, now this is important, the land-based threats receded ataupun berkurangan or eliminated, and at the same time, maritime threats increased. Therefore, this led to change in priorities when it comes to defense and security. And just now I mentioned, yes, we are a maritime nation, so that adds credibility to focus on Navy to protect the nation. Now, of course, naval modernization, expansion of its capabilities, etc., to cope with all this. And just now I mentioned that Malaysia has the Straits of Malacca, a joint responsibility with Indonesia. And of course, we face South China Sea. And thirdly, Borneo, the Borneo Island. Malaysia has two wilayah or territories there, Sabah and Sarawak, especially Sabah, which is very, very close or adjacent to the Philippines. And when you mention non-security or non-traditional threat, maritime threat, I think we first look at Sabah. We look at those areas near the Philippines that has been giving us some trouble. Okay, next. All right, so currently TLDM is consolidating itself. It has naval bases in Semenanjung. The main one is in Lumut, and then you have in Kuantan, and of course we have the submarine base in Kota Kinabalu in Sabah. As I mentioned just now, with Malaysia as a maritime nation, TLDM has a lot more responsibilities, and the government wants to enhance Malaysian maritime power capabilities. However, entrusting the job cannot be confined only to the Navy, so Malaysia introduced this Coast Guard concept type of force, the Maritime Enforcement Agency, MMEA, combining the staff from other security agencies. But this is just to help TLDM. And also the main thing was to clarify the jurisdiction between the Navy and the other maritime agencies. Because you know that the Navy has certain area that of responsibility, and there was some confusion or controversies about extending the responsibility of the Navy not in the properly set sea. So that was one reason. Next. Okay, now this one I like, ranking in ASEAN of the navies. So with the arms race, etc., one is tempted to rank the navies in comparison to other services in the armed forces. Navy is the force that faces the most security challenge in the region due to the geopolitical circumstances and events, and especially for Malaysia. You look at the map, we are surrounded by maritime neighbors. We're surrounded by Indonesia, an archipelagic state. We're surrounded by Singapore, a maritime trading nation, #1 or 2 in the world. We are close to the Philippines in the east, a big also archipelago. And then slightly to the north, you have China, you have South China Sea. So we want to strengthen the Navy. At the moment, regional navies are ranked as follows. Now, this one you will not get, unlike the Army. The Army I took from a global survey. However, these regional navies are just some personal ranking with the help of some Navy officers. #1, Navy in ASEAN, Singapore. #2, Indonesia. #3, Malaysia and Thailand. So Malaysia and Thailand are at par. #4, Vietnam. #5, Brunei and Philippines. #6, Myanmar. And #7, of course, Cambodia. Laos is not maritime, it's a landlocked country. So this is the ranking. So from here, I think you can guess number one, the threats, number two, the ratio or the compatibility between threats facing Malaysia and the capabilities that it might have or not have in order to face the threats. You see, with a lot of issues and coming from maritime threats, Malaysia, I think here you can make some sort of judgment or assessment that it is not enough. Okay, not tak cukup ya, belum mencukupi. Okay, next. All right, finally we come to the third service in the ATM, in the Malaysian Armed Forces, and that is Tentera Udara Diraja Malaysia, or TUDM. Now, it has, it is a smaller unit than the others. However, it has moved from Air Force for logistic purposes. That's what it was thought of in the beginning, to provide support, logistic support, melalui pergerakan udara dari sana ke sini. Now it has moved from that logistic purposes to a more protection force to help the Navy especially. And therefore, this is accompanied by changes in firepower capabilities, but that happened only in the mid-70s. So it was not a priority before that. And one of, or many reasons, one of them is to replace the aging aircraft. Now, when I was younger, I used to hear news that, pesawat angkatan pesawat TUDM terhempas ya di sana sini, crash here and there. So anyway, now we don't hear of that anymore. I mean, we do, but very rare, and mainly of human error. And then also because of the nature and the increase in threats to regional security, so therefore you need air power, enhancing of air power to help the Navy and to protect islands around Sabah, and now we have the Spratlys. Overall, air power is needed to provide a sure response to the changing strategic landscape of the region. Next. Shall we go to the next? All right. And yeah, before, this is one of the last slides. I think the non-military threats to our national security and the role of the forces. Now, what would be the role of the armed forces, which has been organized or established mainly for the purpose of defending against external aggression, to defend your territorial integrity, but now you have this non-traditional threat. So the non-traditional threat, I would like to specifically mention Sabah in East Malaysia. Is a region which is prone to various non-traditional threats. You name it, piracy, transnational crime, illegal migrants, refugees, human smuggling, etc., etc. Now, so the contribution of the ATM to establish security and protection is needed, and now it's very visible. They have more bases there, they are given more assets. However, ATM alone cannot do the job efficiently or effectively. It requires the cooperation of other agencies, etc. So here, in this, I come back to say that, to conclude that our armed forces both in its practice and also in the conceptualization in ideas that started small or constrained, and now they have come to embrace this comprehensive or total defense and security, because non-military threats have come in. Now, why the importance of the armed forces? My argument is that, yes, they do need the cooperation of other agencies. However, I think in all this, as we have seen in practice in Malaysia, the armed forces still is very, very important, and I should say at the forefront, because, well, it remains a crucial institution because, number one, only the armed forces are equipped with the extent of that capabilities. Number two, readiness. And number three, very important, there's a spelling mistake there, institutional efficacy. In English, it's efficacy. I think this is French, efficacy. So because of these three elements, capabilities, readiness, and institutional efficacy, so the armed forces still remain a very, very important institution, despite, you know, the establishment of other institutions. I'm saying this not because I've spent more than 20 years teaching in the armed forces institutions, but I think looking at the way things are handled, for example, very important, the 2013 Lahad Datu incident. Okay, next. Do we still have? All right. So apart from those capabilities, the establishment, the role of the armed forces, today, to secure peace, security, you need also more than weapons or guns. We need diplomacy. Now, to fit in the armed forces in this sort of international political and diplomatic setup, today we have come to accept the existence of defense diplomacy. Because force alone does not guarantee protection or security, so you need to talk or have a softer approach, and therefore we include that in defense diplomacy. Now, Malaysia is involved in defense diplomacy through ASEAN. We have ADMM, ADMM Plus, etc. But we also have bilateral defense and security arrangement with neighbors, and a multilateral defense arrangement called the FPDA, the Five Power Defense Arrangement. That was set up in the 70s. You remember I talked just now from defense to security, but we maintained FPDA despite some accusations or some question that people say, oh, you call yourself a non-aligned country, but how come you are in FPDA? But I think you can explain the reasons. At the global level, Malaysia is actively involved in UN peacekeeping missions. So this is also a part of that defense diplomacy, however, focus on international security. All right. Dr. Fairoz, is that the end or you? Okay. So this is my conclusion, that Malaysian defense policy conception is shaped by the kinds of threat the nation faced, also affected by subsequent changes in regional and international geopolitical circumstances. Just now we saw the change or the shift from the Cold War to the post-Cold War. So it's not just a change in dates or period, but the content of it. So the content of it forced countries to rethink its defense position or concept. Now, the strength of Malaysia's defense force is dependent on the various requirements and needs, as I've explained, and balancing priorities. So we balance our priorities. Why is it people say that, oh, your defense budget is not that big, despite the array of threats that you say you are facing? Then we say, oh, we have other priorities. At the same time, we are recognizant that if you want to preserve peace, then you also need to augment the preparation for war. And so I think that's what I believe in. You might believe in something else. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I think that's all that I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. Ruhanas Harun, for your presentation. We can see in time, punctual, on time, 60 minutes.
Oh, is it? I see.
Yes.
Oh ya, harus
Okay.
sepatutnya jam berapa saya habis? 11.
It's okay, 60 minutes enough.
Oh, jadi saya ini lebih ya, melebihi
No,
masa
no.
ataupun no, correct.
Oh,
Right on
correct.
time.
Yes.
Oh, okay, all right. Okay,
We can
thank
see
you,
your
Pak.
present. Okay, we can see in your presentation is extraordinary and enlightening presentation. Now the second session is question answer. At this time we have 1 hour to question answer. Professor Ruhanas, I will give you.
Pak Guntur,
okay.
do we take a break or not?
No,
No,
directly.
terus ya. Oh, okay.
Okay. Yeah. Professor Ruhanas, I will give you information that Defense Management Faculty, they have 3 study program. The first is Defense Management, yeah. The first is Defense Management study program. The second is Defense Economic, and the last is Energy Security.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, because we have 3 study programs, so I can arrange. The first is 3 person from Defense Management.
I see.
Sorry, yeah, 1 person from Defense Management study program, and then 1 person from Energy Security, and 1 person from Defense Economic.
Oh, I see.
Okay,
Yeah, yeah.
please, question from student, please, from Defense Management. Okay.
Thank you very much, Mr. Guntur, as a moderator today, and Professor Ruhanas Harun. I'm Mr. Tri from Defense Management, Indonesia Defense University. Thank you very much about your presentation. It's very important and very interesting to make up our knowledge about the Malaysia defense policy.
Just a minute, Dr. Fairuz, can you withdraw the slide so that we can have space for gambar, yeah? Okay, all right. Okay, go on.
Okay, thank you. Just one question, Ms. Ruhanas Harun. My question is, has Malaysia defense policy for the next 5 to 10 years been prepared? If so, how is the concept of change based on the changes in the strategic environment in the region and globally? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Pak Guntur, what do we do? Kita ambil satu soalan ataupun kumpul? You collect 1 or 2, or I just reply immediatly to
Professor,
one? Yeah.
I collect 3.
Oh,
3%.
okay. All right. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, 1 person from Defense Economic, please.
Thank you, moderator, for this opportunity. I'm Andi Sundra from Defense Economic Department. Defense Management Faculty. In Indonesia, if the threat of acts of terrorism is still below the crisis level, then the involvement of the army forces, TNI, is only possible when the police asks for assistance.
All right.
So,
Okay.
so that involvement army force is under the control of police operation.
Mhm.
The question is, how about in Malaysia?
Okay.
How the rule of army and police to overcome of terrorism?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. All right.
Okay, thank you, Sunra. So one person from energy security, please.
Okay, thank you, moderator. My name is Nubaiti. I'm student of Energy Security Program. I would like to ask you about Malaysia defense policy. I have some questions, Professor. My first question is, you said that in Malaysia defense policy, ATM remains a professional military, no interest in politics. How do you deal with this situation to determine your defense policy, even though your military is not in politics? And my second question is, what defense policy does Malaysia take in the face of the VUCA world and the COVID-19 pandemic? And my third question is, what is Malaysia's strategy to protect your country from trade war between US and China and the South China Sea dispute? And the last, do Malaysia consider your national energy for your defense? Actually, I'm very curious about your presentation, Professor. Yeah, jadi my last question is, do Malaysia consider your national energy for your defense? If it is yes, what is its contribution to your defense policy? Okay, thank you, Professor.
Alright, wah, ya Pak Guntur, ini sudah cukup ya?
Cukup, tapi ini yang Nurbaiti is too long.
Okay, tak apa.
No problem.
Tak mengapa. Okay, nanti saya jawab yang satu-satu ya.
Yes, okay.
Yang pertama tadi, the first one is about the, I think it's about future planning, isn't it? Thinking about Malaysia's defense next 5 to 10 years, and how would you conceptualize or implement? Now, as you see, I am not in the military. I'm just analyzing or observing. So I'm the second source. I think we have reached a concept, what we call just now a comprehensive defense and security. I think beyond that, you cannot go beyond that for now, because if you look at threats, current, but also you predict threats in 5 to 10 years is actually a very long time. So it depends on, number one, the geopolitical circumstances. So if, let's say, there is going to be war between the US and China, which I hope not, and then we have to change our scope of defense policy. You have also to change your priorities because you are going to face war. However, that for the moment, I think I am not able to conceive that there will be war between China and the United States. But if there is, then of course the implementation, the priorities of the armed forces will change. So I don't know if they are thinking of that. Then if they think that it will happen, then you should already prepare for it. Just now in my last conclusion, I said, if you want peace, you prepare for war, all right? But that is up to those running the ATM. So the same with implementation. But anyway, you want peace, prepare for war. yes, but I think you can go according to your own affordability on that. All right, the second question is about terrorism. Now, in Malaysia, there has always been separation between the police and the military. So right from the beginning, we had Kementerian Pertahanan, MINDEF, Ministry of Defense, and we had a Ministry of Home Affairs, Kementerian Dalam Negeri. So KDN, Kementerian Dalam Negeri, will take care of internal security, safety, security of the nation within, inside. Now, terrorism comes under the purview of the KDN, the Kementerian Dalam Negeri, because the nature of the threat is not external aggression, but operate within the society. So it is the role and under the purview of Kementerian Dalam Negeri. However, we do need support or help from other ministries. So to combine this thinking and effort at securing the country from such threat as terrorism, the Prime Minister's department is actually the coordinating body, and you have the Majlis Keselamatan Negara, the MKN. So in MKN, you bring in police, military, and other people. So that's how you reconcile. We never had, like you all in Indonesia, you had this merger before, but then now it's separated. Ours had always been two ministries, and we delimit their functions and responsibilities. Okay. So I hope that answer your question. Now the third, Nobaiti, very, very long, quite a number of questions. Now, you alluded to my mentioning that the Malaysian military is a professional military and that they are not interested in politics. They have never staged a coup, rampasan kuasa, a coup, and Malaysia was never under the rule of the military government. So I think probably we, well, it's not correct. Some people say, oh, you inherit that from the British, but then, you know, Myanmar was also under the British, but it came under military rule. So I think in this concept of professional military is that the military accepted its role and responsibilities is to protect the nation. Whereas the direction, the overall thinking about national security is from the civilian or from the government. And there is no problem. There's no problem in the relationship between the civilian government and the military, because at the end of the day, if the military doesn't take part in politics, it can focus on it being an agency that is responsible for the security, territorial integrity, etc., etc. So better not get involved in politics. Politics is, you know, it's complicated, it's dirty, and it's not worth, you know, the military. We train you to defend the territorial integrity, sovereignty of the country. So why do you want to spend time, you know, in little politicking or politics? So that is what I mean by professional military, and it's better. It gives the country a certain certainty and stability. But it does not mean that the military does not have a chance. It has. It's just that they don't want in Malaysia. They want to do the job as best. That's it. Now, your second question, Baiti, is about the COVID-19. If I understand you well, it's to what extent the military has a role in it? Yes, of course they do. Well, COVID-19 has been declared as an enemy, or a security concern. So the military can involve itself. For example, during this MCO, as my dean alluded to just now, MCO, the movement control operation. So yes, the military will play a role. They help police to mind roadblocks, especially in Sabah, Sarawak, kawasan pendalaman in the rural areas where only the military would go. So that they have a role, but a role that they share with other security agencies and civilian bodies. Now, about US and China, what was the question? Did you ask me what is Malaysia's position on that?
Nur Baiti,
Yeah.
please repeat once more about the last question.
Okay, my question is, what is Malaysia's strategy to protect your country from trade war between US and China?
Trade war, okay, good.
And then so China Sea dispute.
Yes, okay. So with regard to the trade war, of course, there is impact in Malaysia. However, I think first and foremost, okay, number one, Malaysia is a trading nation. And number two, we try to protect ourselves from the falling out in case of trade war. Well, at the moment, I think this trade war, fortunately, is confined or constrained, number one, in rhetorics between the two, and number two, between themselves. So at the moment, it remains there, so there is not really big danger unless the situation aggravated. I am not an economist, so I don't pay much attention to that. Now, about the South China Sea, I think Malaysia has made a position as one of the claimants. However, I would say this position is something like between the devil and the deep blue sea, meaning that we are caught in a dilemma. Malaysia has claims, but in comparison to Vietnam or the Philippines, Malaysia is a bit quiet or mild, vis-a-vis China. It's now some people say, "Oh, you are very accommodating with China." No, that's not the reason. I think the reason is because of the nature of Malaysian diplomacy, that it wants to doesn't want to aggravate situation, and people say, "Well, 3 weeks ago, the Chinese Air Force." Pesawat udara flew over some of your territory. So the foreign ministry has called the ambassador of China to Malaysia to explain, and then also demanded from Beijing an explanation. Oh, you know what Beijing said? Oh, that is a part of their training, latihan. So many in Malaysia don't believe that. I don't know if you believe or not. This pesawat terbang melalui ruang udara Malaysia. So but Malaysia says very sternly that yes, we have our claim, we stake our claim, but Malaysia, you know, we have very extensive trade relations with China. So to me, I think it's a good position that we are not as vocal as Philippines or Vietnam. And that, yeah, we do so quietly, but we still support the position of Philippines, of other countries vis-a-vis China in this dispute. And finally, your national energy question. Now, well, I think maybe tomorrow they will explain to you this national energy. However, in Malaysia, unlike in many countries, I know this in Vietnam, in Myanmar, or even Indonesia at one time, that the military is involved in, you know, the security energy through participation in the acquiring, etc. Now, the Malaysian Armed Forces involvement in military, in national energy is to guard our sources of energy that you find maybe in the South China Sea or in Sarawak. So as a professional military, I think number one, that they don't get involved in politics, but number two, I'm not sure they if they are involved in business of securing energy, but the business of protecting those energy sources or base, yes, it's part of their job. Because as I said just now, only the military can do it. Who is going to protect our rigs in the South China Sea, if not the military? Police can't do that. All right. So I hope I have answered. Yeah, Baiti. You can pose your question maybe tomorrow when you do the resources. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Professor. I think it's clear all of answer. All student interest your topic today, Professor. So I think we still have a question from student. Okay, now one person from defense management, please.
Excuse me, moderator.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you, Mr. Guntur, and thank you, Prof. Tuhanas, for the great presentation. My question is, where did the procurement of Malaysian defense equipment come from? More precisely, is there a fuel injection or a country that supports Malaysia in terms of defense? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, again, you see, procurement is a very, very sensitive area in defense. I don't know about Indonesia, but in Malaysia, it is a sensitive issue. And number two, I think tomorrow or this afternoon, when you do your defense resources, they might explain to you in further detail. But for the moment, suffice to say that where does Malaysia get its weapons, etc.? Now, we do not particularly stick to one source atau satu sumber. Now, for many reasons, it is the sources are various, not just one or two countries. And why? Well, or what affect, or what are the factors that affect this decision? Of course, number one, I think it's the relationship, the history. So the relationship between Malaysia and the suppliers. As I mentioned just now, in the past, our traditional friends are the West, the United States, UK, Europe, etc. So politically and naturally, we turn to them because we are familiar with their system, with their country, and we trade a lot with them. So that is one source or one factor that affect the purchase or the acquiring of the weapons system in Malaysia. One. Number two, it has also, so today we buy a lot from the West. Let's say the jet fighters come from the United States, from Britain, and our submarines are French. So those of you who are familiar with Sabah, it's in Sepangga near Kota Kinabalu. That's where our submarines are based, the Scorpions, and they are French. French, and actually it's a Franco-Spanish cooperation, and we have 2 submarines there. So I don't know whether it will increase. But we also diversify our sources. For example, now the Navy had been, trying to get supplies, boat, ships, not only from the West, but also from China. So traditionally, in the past, we got boats from Sweden, from etc. So now we also want to do business with China. Now, as far as aircraft, for example, yes, I said just now we got from Britain, from the US, but also we had quite a close relationship with Russia in terms of procuring pesawat, terbang, aircraft. For example, before you had the MiGs and now the Sukhoi, and there is one Air Force base in Malaysia that specialize or handles, Sukhois, for example. So second point is diversifying. Now, what is money or affordability a factor in deciding where you get your weapons, etc.? It could be, but then you would say, oh, the aircraft that you get from the United States is more expensive. The submarine that you get from France is more expensive, or that you pay more. So in this case, whether one will have to think hard whether affordability is the case here. And finally, this is my personal view, procurement, I think at the end of the day is a political decision. It's made by political leadership. The military can, let's say, recommend. So I, as an expert in the military, in the armed forces, I make recommendation for you to buy aircraft A. However, you means here, just now I said that ours is a professional military. So all these things are handled by civilian governments. So they make the decision. Huh? Okay. All right.
Thank you, Professor. I think it's clear enough.
I don't know about in your country. Who decides?
Yes, common.
Is it the
the same, Professor? Okay, no problem. Yeah. Thank you, Arum. So next student from defense economic. Directly to answer is okay. 1 person. Okay, from defense economic. Okay, no, Nobody? From
Excuse me.
okay, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Professor. I am Asti from Economic Defense of Defense Management Faculty. I have one question.
Yeah.
The border area has a strategic role as the main gate of a country and a representation of the political, economic, socio-cultural, defense, and security aspect. Social and economic problems that are often faced in the Indonesia-Malaysia border region. My question, what is the impact of implementing this policy, especially in the economic field? Thank you.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. No, it's a very big question. So if we refer to border, you know, the existence of borders may regulate the entry or the exit of threats, etc. But it can also facilitate or hinder movement of goods or people and in trading. Now, when you mention borders in between Malaysia and its neighbors, we have to think more than in terms of a land border. Now, if you look at the border between the United States and Mexico, so if they have problems, you remember that the Americans were trying to keep Mexicans out, so they built apa itunya sempadan ya, borders. They built gates or pagar to stop illegal migrants from going into the United States. Now, Malaysia had tried to build some pagar benteng up north between north of Malaya, Peninsular Malaysia, and Thailand. But it's a very small area, and now ours was not to stop Thais from coming in, but to prevent illegal migrants smuggling from Thailand, and also the human trafficking from Myanmar, from Thailand. But I think I have seen that, you know, it's not really a concrete border that you cannot pass through. Now, between Malaysia dan Sarawak pun ada kan borders, but I'm sure you are familiar with Jalan Tikus or laluan tikus apanya. So, well, building of borders as such does not actually guarantee, you know, this passage, that they still can be violated. So the best, I think, way to regulate all these border issues is to have a policy, and that each countries respect, you know, that policy. So again, I thank you for raising this, because in Malaysia, again, the armed forces, our army, for example, play a very important role. You see the sempadan ya, perbatasan di antara Sarawak dengan Kalimantan. There, the army, the military has a very big role to play. I don't know if you have been to some of these posts, you know, along the Kalimantan Sarawak border. They are manned by the military. The same side of Indonesia is also manned by TNI. So that's where you can, this is an additional, how do you say, well, not additional, I think it's part of the core responsibilities of the armed forces, of the army in this case, that they are responsible for the sanctity, for the integrity of your wilayah, of your territory. So that's where it's rule. And of course, in terms of the socio-economic impact, yes, it is very important to have a secure border, because that's where You can regulate threats, but you can also regulate business, trade between the two. And I think for Malaysia and Indonesia, this is very important, very important that we work together, and especially that, you know, there are a lot of Indonesians working in Malaysia, migrants, the TKI. It happened, and it's okay because you have a good implementation of border agreements. Of course, there are violations to that, the illegal migrants, but that is very difficult to control because of the politics, the geography of Malaysia, Indonesia neighborhood is quite difficult to control, but it's also the socio cultural factors that makes Malaysia attractive place for Indonesians to come and work. I think they would rather choose Malaysia than going to Hong Kong or the Philippines, if you're thinking about the cultural connections. Siapa tadi yang tanya? Asti ya? Is that, have I answered your question? Is that all right?
Thank you, Prof.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Prof. I think it's good enough. Also, I experienced when I in 2016, I think, I was joined border cooperation agreement in Malaysia. Yeah. The answer, I think, is clear enough. Okay, now from student from security energy, please. Still have?
Thank you to moderator and to presentation from Prof. Ruhanas Harun. My name is Cakrawati from Energy Security Graduate Program, Republic Indonesia Defense University. My question, how does Malaysia maintain its national defense in the land, sea, and air border area? What is the role of civilian in support defense? Is there collaboration between the military and civilians? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So let me get it correct that you're talking about national defense in terms of border areas. Is that correct?
Yes, correct. Border area.
Yeah. Oh, okay. All right. And also the role of here you're talking about the civilian-military relationship as well. Okay. How does the civilian support the military? Okay, correct, Chakrawati? Yeah, betul ya?
Yes.
All right,
correct.
first, well, as I have explained to you, the role of the Malaysian Armed Forces, yes, to defend our national sovereignty and territorial integrity. So that is the big RAM. Now, coming to the smaller scope or area of defense, yes, they do play a very, very important role. We have, for example, in the north along the border, you have military post and also area of responsibility up north, land border, as well as just now I mentioned along the Kalimantan, Sarawak, Sabah border, but you also have the Navy guarding the sea or the maritime borders. I'm sure you are familiar with the interactions between the Indonesian and the Malaysian Royal Navy, TLDM and TNI Angkatan Laut. So these are some of the cooperation that we have with neighboring countries. Definitely you cannot patrol the seas and straits alone. You need cooperation from your neighbors. And then how is the support of the civilian population to the military? All right, just now I said ours is a professional military. They're not interested in politics. So the relationship had always been good, very civilized. We, as civilian, we do not look at the military as a threat to our political control, because there had been occasion when the military, when the Malaysian Armed Forces could seize the opportunity. They said no. So it's purely a defense force. So there is no problem. And I mentioned just now, in many cases, even for civilian, so-called civilian operation, we still need the military to help, because they are trained, they have the assets. And I give you one example. During flood a few years back, it was the military who was the first group, to be there. Why? Because they had the assets, they had the training, and very important, they have a very efficient organization. The chain of command in the military is such that it's faster and easier for you to decide and implement an action. So no problem. I think in Malaysia, the civilian military relation has always been good, and it remains so. That's why we have this comprehensive total defense, because we want to we do not want to exclude anybody. So you read the defense white paper, it says defending the nation is not confined to the military. So that's briefly relationship, civilian and military. I understand why you asked this.
Okay, thank you, Professor.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Cakrawati. I think it's clear enough answer the professor. Now, from student from event management, do you still have question?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Thank you, moderator. Your Honorable Professor Rohanas. My name is Nurisala Ramadhani. My question is, in the pandemic that hit all the countries in the world in 2020 to date, and has caused disturbance, how is the government policy related to the defense budget in Malaysia in the condition of the COVID-19, especially in health and the global economy? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, when it comes to defense budget, it is thought and considered, not within the condition or circumstances of pandemic or COVID. They have increased slightly in 2021, but I'm not sure that that is because of COVID. As I said earlier, we think of other threats and necessities that makes the Malaysian government decide on a certain amount of budget, for this year or last year or next year. Because the budget or the finance for COVID is taken elsewhere, from other sources. So it does not interfere with the military budget. It does not interfere with the military budget. And if you look at military budget in Malaysia, they have already apportioned to, so let's say for weapons, for social development or welfare of the armed forces members, etc. So it does not, COVID does not interfere in the decision to, yeah, okay. Again, this is part, maybe you can tomorrow or today, is it, or tomorrow, post this question to those doing the human resource and procurement or budget.
Okay. Thank you, Professor. I think it's clear enough. Thank you, Nuris Salina. Now still have time, maybe from economics, defense economic, please.
Thank you, moderator, for the opportunity. Today, Prof, it's been an honor. Before I asking my question, I introduce myself. My name is Ansar Tutu. I'm from Defense Economic.
Asalnya dari mana?
Defense Economic, Prof.
Kan wilayah mana? Dari orang Jakarta atau apa?
Oh, I'm born in Jakarta.
Oh, okay.
But my mother from Sulawesi.
Ah, Sulawesi, okay.
My question is, in Indonesia, procurement in defense acquisition can be done in 4 ways, namely domestic production, collaboration, offset, and import.
Yeah.
My main question is how the Malaysian policy on defense acquisition. That's all. Thank you.
Okay. I think this is related to soalan nombor 5 ya, yang tadi we talk about procurement. So now you would like to also talk or want me to discuss acquisition, defense. So here, acquisition of material, is it, for the armed forces? Is that correct?
Yes, yes, Prof.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I am not actually an expert on procurement, on that, but my answer will not deviate far from what I explained on procurement. So how does the Malaysian Armed Forces, or ATM, gets its finance or money? Well, one is from budget allocation of the government. So every year they have budget allocation for the armed forces. Number 2, well, just now I said that we are a professional military and we're not involved in politics. Yes, and in some countries, the military, for example, has an active participation in economics. I know that in Cambodia, at one time, they are involved in this business, that business, etc. Now, in Malaysia, for some time, it's been looked upon as not very nice if you, because we are government servants in the military. If you as government servants get yourself enriched and meddle in business affairs. However, the armed forces is involved in some business, but through how do you say, through the setting up, establishment of some corporations. They have the ATM has its own tabung, or the its own corporations. They even have their own bank. This one will help actually in the welfare of the members of the armed forces. They put in their pensions, they contribute as investments in all this corporation, and that is for the purpose of the welfare of the members of the armed forces, not to buy weapons, etc. So otherwise, for acquiring weapons, it's from the budget. They have a legitimate reason, to request. As I said just now, you propose what you want to buy, this and that, and then you say, I need, 10 million ringgit or 15 million ringgit to buy this. But the business that they have, in terms of corporation, that is more for investment, for the benefit of the members of the armed forces. So I think that is best explanation that I can give you as the sumber, the sources of finance. All right.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much, Professor. I think it's clear enough. Okay. We still have time. Maybe from energy security defense. Maybe. Do you still have question?
Okay. Thank you, moderator. My name is Sadil Fajar from Energy Security Program. Thank you for interesting presentation, Professor.
Thank you.
Here, I want to ask about the energy policy in Malaysia, especially for defense. What kind in the whole policy for energy? Is there any quota or such like special requirement for defense in the energy sector? Or is there any policy of energy for defense or military in Malaysia? Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So energy for defense. Now, if I understand your question well, is there a specific allocation in terms of participation in energy-related business or corporation? Or what is the government giving to the in terms of energy to the defense sector? Is that
Yes. Maybe the government allocation for a military sector, and is there any regulation to rules that allocation for military in Malaysia? Thank you.
Yeah. I understand, but I am not sure that I can answer your question with precision because, again, I think, here we have to follow certain rules. And just now we talked about budget allocation. So they have priorities. So the government will give priorities to the armed forces, a budget in terms of priorities that the nation gives to each of its ministries. Now, energy policy is normally allocated to the Ministry of Science, Technology, and then you also have, there are three ministries that takes care of this. Ministry, I can't remember exactly, Sumber Asli, the natural resources, etc. But it's the Ministry of Science and Technology that control the needs and the requirement of energy policy and how to secure But just now, as I said, the armed forces would be in charge of securing or providing security in areas where you have sources of energy and where the area where that sources is in jeopardy or in danger. Otherwise, it's not the business of the armed forces, to get involved in all these details. It will detract you, from the real core business that you are in. So I think that's the best guess that I can give you. Yeah, Adil?
Okay, I got it. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you, Prof.
We have a different setup from Indonesia, a different history of the development and the role of the armed forces in the national life. Not as complicated, as in Indonesia. Quite clear, delimited. We have delimitations, etc.
Okay, thank you, Professor. Yeah, I think it's good enough. Okay, Professor, in here we have one student from doctoral. He have one question for you. Please, one person from doctoral.
Thank you very much, moderator. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Professor, I really enjoy your lecture today. It's very
Thank you.
comprehensive. It's really a comprehensive lecture, and we learned so much from you today. I'm interested in the part when you mentioned about the Rukun Negara.
Yeah, okay.
And you compare with Pancasila in Indonesia. But you said that in Malaysia, if I'm not mistaken, hear what you have said, you don't really care. I mean, don't pay much attention on the Rukun Negara. So my question is, in Indonesia, we use Pancasila as the basis of the philosophy of the states, the philosophy of the law, and also the principles of the Indonesian people. And we use Pancasila also to protect our citizens from outside threats.
Yeah.
In particular, in this time when all information is very easy to access. My question is how the Malaysian government protect your society or your people face the challenge or the threat from outside in relation with the Rukun Negara. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Rujito. Okay, now I was trying to sort of make that comparison between Pancasila and Rukun Negara in the context of that Malaysia is a new nation, number one. That number two, Malaysia is a multi-ethnic society. Where, you have major ethnic groups. And number three, Malaysian politics since the Merdeka, since Merdeka, had always had sort of what we call an ethnic paradigm. So everything is based on ethnicity, etc. Now, Rukun Negara tries to overcome that, tries to go beyond that ethnic, you can call it division, etc., to arrive at a common core values. Now, the common core values ada 5, the prinsipnya, kepercayaan kepada Tuhan, etc. Maaf ya, saya pun agak lupa. So these 5 principles that we teach to our school children. Remember, school children. So anak-anak di sekolah mereka boleh sebutnya 5. Tapi bila sampai ke peringkat yang lebih tinggi, tidak diajar, mungkin tidak ingat pun. And very important is that in Indonesia, there is a common value in the sense that everybody accepts Indonesia, Indonesian core values, which is protected and based to a certain extent on Pancasila. Now, we accept that Rukun Negara, but Rukun Negara came from above, from the state, to tell people this is what you should believe in. Yes, if you tell that, of course, people say, yeah, okay, I study in school, etc. However, among the population down, further down, they don't know because there is still a search for what should be the core values of Malaysia. Should it be based on the core values of the majority ethnic group, which is the Malays? Yeah? So the Malays are Muslims, they speak Malay, etc., etc. Now, it is very, very difficult, I think, to explain that to the Chinese or Indians who do not and cannot, and there's no need. There's no need even for them to learn Bahasa Melayu. They don't even have to speak Malay to survive in Malaysia. So we are still looking for that core values. And that core values is being defined from time to time, politically defined. And so, susah. You know, in Indonesia, come what may, that is Pancasila. Huh? You cannot even have a political party yang namanya akan dikenali sebagai Partai Islam Indonesia. Tidak kan? So, because you protect that core values as contained in Pancasila. However, in Malaysia, it's very difficult because it's all the time being sort of questioned, or these core values being considered and revised. So to me, that is one obstacle. For example, in Malaysia, until today, they cannot decide what is the language that students should study throughout their school or university life. So the policy keeps changing. At one time they say, okay, these subjects be taught in English. I mean, it's very, very complicated. But because that is the nature of Malaysia's multi-ethnic society, and we are very democratic about it. We cannot impose. In Indonesia, you did that. In Thailand, they did that a long time ago. But now you cannot do it. Bahasa Indonesia. Yes. That apanya? Sumpah Pemuda. We did not have any Sumpah Pemuda. But you had. The same thing in Thailand, 1930s. But now it's too late. Malaysia cannot do it. So we are still in search of that core value. So itu yang menjadi masalah. By right, just now you said, how do you protect threats from outside? We have entrusted, depends on that kind of threat. Threat to core values, yes, we have that. We say in the Defense White Paper, in the Dasar Keselamatan Negara, Malaysia's security policy, we mention protection of core values. But then I cannot tell you exactly, whether these core values mean the same thing to you, to me, and my neighbor. So that is the problem. Yes, you have the word core values, protection of core values. So in the Defense White Paper, in Dasar Keselamatan, keselamatan in Indonesian is translated as keamanan, security. So we call it keselamatan. So it's mentioned protection of core values. So it's really a big definition. So first you have to agree on those core values. Indonesia, no problem. In Malaysia, we are still searching. Okay. Adil, ya itu Rujito ya.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you so much for the explanation.
Thank you, Professor and Mr. Rujito. I think it's clear enough. So we still have time. Maybe from energy security, you have question, please? All of students, if you have question, please. All of students.
Excuse me, sir.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, ma'am, for your. Yeah. May I ask you, is there any national insight test in Malaysia?
In any what?
Any national insight test?
Wawasan kebangsaan ya?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry, national? I can't hear very well. Apa ya, Pak Guntur?
Wawasan kebangsaan, Prof.
Oh, wawasan.
Yes.
Oh, wawasan. Okay, vision.
Wawasan
Yes.
kebangsaan.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Yeah, of course we have. It began with, I don't know if you remember our Prime Minister, Dr. Mahathir Mohamad. He had this Vision 2020, Visi 2020. Sekarang ini tahun 2021. Jadi visi itu sudah lalu ya. So yes, of course we had many visions. So one Vision 2020, and then you have other vision in terms of economic development. Yes, we do. That is not lacking. And now, I think the focus of all these visions or policies is today, it comes back that the most or the very important thing in Malaysia is national unity and national integration. National unity and integration. Of course, we had the vision to be developed, industrialized, developed country by 2020. To certain extent, yes, we have improved. But as I said, I am not an economist, so I don't know to what extent has that been fulfilled. Maybe not 100%, but I think we managed to bring up the economy, the socio-economic development. However, why are we now coming back to national unity and national integration? Because as I tried to explain with Rukun Negara now, it's a problem of nation building, which is not yet completed. So we are still in the process. And secondly, now, I mentioned just now, since 2019, we have this another vision, negara maritim. So that is a big vision that will change many things. One is the focus, and the other is how do you want to achieve this a vision of a maritime nation. So we are working hard on that. They have debates, discussions, and of course it's also inserted in the our national defense policy, maritime nation. So we have all these visions. So Lena, yeah, not lacking.
Okay, thank you, Professor. Actually, according to schedule, we have time 10 minutes until 15. If still have question, please, but it's enough, it's okay.
Sir.
Okay, please.
Thank you
Right,
for
please. Yeah.
this time. I'm Tin from Economic Defense Department. My question for Professor Ruhanas, especially about Indonesia citizen. Indonesia citizen in border area of Kalimantan, I mean Indonesia and Malaysia can come to Malaysia without a passport. And Indonesia citizen
No, without visa. You need a passport. Huh?
Yes, visa.
Oh, okay.
And Indonesia citizen can buy land in Malaysia. And my question is, how about the official regulation from Malaysia, especially about this? Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, all right. Now, you see, there are two things here. One, that this is pertaining to citizens along the borders. And you know that citizens or people or perkampungan along the borders, they take a very special place or position. They can violate, can here means not diberi permisi, but sometimes they do violate laws, immigration laws, that you need a permit or a pass to cross border. Now, in some cases, the Malaysian government, with respect to certain border areas or countries bordering us, besides the normal regulation that you need a passport and visa, but now under ASEAN rule, we do not need a visa to enter any of these ASEAN countries below 1 month, ya, 1 bulan. Kalau selepas itu perlu for tourists or social visit. So you have that. So one, you have that visa, a non-requirement of visa below 30 days. However, in certain areas where, as you mentioned just now, people living along the border, they will cross, the border 12 times a day, 3 times a day for socio-economic transaction. Now, in some areas, we have special permit. I don't know if it's still there, but in those days, along the border with Thailand and the northern Malay states, they do have special permit, for you to come in and out. I think at one time with Singapore as well. Now, I am not sure if we have that arrangement with Indonesia along the Sarawak Kalimantan border. I think the military would be able to answer that. Yeah, this special permit. So because sometimes the special permit is necessary because you are constantly interact with each other across the border. However, I think for that to happen smoothly, this is where you need the role of the security people, either police or the immigration department, or as we see along Sarawak, Kalimantan, it's the military. So they are entrusted with this security duties as well. So, but as I said just now, well, if you can't get those permit, you can do the laluan tikus, ya, jalan tikus. Yes, we do have regulations, but sometimes not abided. But that's not our problem. That's a problem of the security enforcement or the implementation side.
Okay, thank you, Professor. I think it's clear enough. So, I think it's time is over. We have 11 students give answer and good listen up question. Thank you, Professor.
Thank you.
Let me read some conclusion today. The national defense for sovereign state is a way of protecting and maintaining integrity and unity, especially national sovereignty from many of threats. The state have responsibility to build a national defense system, universal defense system, for example, all of citizens, territory, and other national resources. The latest government must be prepared from beginning and totally implemented, integrated, directed, and sustainable to enforce national sovereignty, territorial integrity, and security from many threats. Okay, now we have come to the end of the meeting today. Once again, I would like to give a big appreciate to the speaker, Prof. Ruhanas Harun, for the wonderful presentation and material. And also thank you for your all of participation for joining today's session. I really hope we will meet again next time in better time and better condition.
Yep.
So thank you for the attention, and then all of students, see you in the afternoon. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon, and moderator please.
Thank you for the moderator who guided the session well. Let us give a big round of applause to the moderator. To the moderator, you may be seated. To express our appreciation upon the speaker and moderator, the Defense Management Faculty is going to award certificate to the speaker and moderator. The Vice Dean of Defense Management Faculty will award the certificate. Please.
Thank you, the speaker, Professor Ruhanas Harun, for your excellent presentations. It's very useful for our students. And also thank you for Colonel Guntur for moderating this session. To express our gratitude upon the speaker and moderator in the sessions, on behalf of the Faculty of Defense Management, Indonesian Defense University, I am Air Force Marshal Anton Santosa, the Vice Dean of the Defense Management Faculty of the Republic of Indonesia Defense University, will award certificate of appreciation to the speaker and moderator. May all the information which delivered by the speaker in
nice.
And also from the question and answer session will be useful for all us. The first certificate is awarded to the speaker, Professor Ruhanas Harun. Please accept our certificate, Professor. And let us give a round of applause to Professor Ruhanas Harun.
Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. And the second certificate is awarded to the moderator, Colonel Guntur Eko Saputro.
Yes,
thank you, Colonel, for moderating this session. Let us give a round to the applause to the Colonel Guntur. That's all for this session. Thank you very much all participants in this session. Thank you. Good afternoon.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, let's all together we are take a picture. Please smile and say cheese. 1, 2, 3. Cheese.
Negara.
One more now. One more, but now please smile and chase the right hand of the chest and say, Salam bela negara. Follow me. Salam bela
Salam
negara.
bela negara.
Salam negara.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Once again, we would like to convey our appreciation to the speaker that has shared his thoughts and expression to all of us. May all the knowledge have guided be useful for our nation. Distinguished participants, all the agenda of this program session one today with topic Defense Policy of Malaysia, Concept and Practice. Thank you for the time and attention given during this session. Thank you for all participants who have been actively participating during the session. On behalf of the organizer, we would like to apologize for all mistakes during this session. We want to remind all participants that session 2 will begin at 1:40. We do hope all participants to join 10 minutes before the session. We would also like to remind all of us to always implement health protocol by washing our hands, wearing our mask, and minding our distance. Let us close this session by saying Hamdalah. Alhamdulillah, Hirobil.
Alamin.
Bye
Thank
bye.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Afternoon.
Alhamdulillah, thank you.
Thank you.
Terima kasih Profesor.
Terima kasih ya, jumpa
Thank
lagi.
you. Thank you, Prof.
Hah?
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Good.